I will be sitting down with Chad Wilson to talk about his story. And because he wants to set the record straight on how Green Party candidates have been treated. So let's talk about it. Thanks for tuning in. What's going on, everybody? I am here with Chad Wilson, Green Party candidate for presidential nomination, and he wants to set the record straight on how some of the rules work, if there's been any misconceptions there, and also how some of the candidates have been personally treated, including Chad himself. So first of all, let's welcome Chad. How are you doing, man? Thanks for being here.
I'm doing pretty good, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And, you guys are on the front line. There's a real crew of progressive media that really focus on the right things, the right perspective. And I think it's important to illuminate that what's going on in this little bubble. Really, I'm just hoping that it gets bigger. So.
Good stuff, man. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you taking your time out to run for office, which is also why I feel like it's important that, not only you, but every candidate, regardless of party, has a fair chance of winning. And apparently that has not been the case for the Green Party. So if you don't mind, can you share some of your experiences with the audience so they can get your perspective on what's been going down in that primary?
When I got into the race, I thought it was just mainly some toxic individuals, like just in some leadership positions. I didn't really understand the whole magnitude of what was going on. And as I kind of got deeper, I realized that it really is a centralized group. And I know that Justin Beth talked about it, we're being decentralized, but they use it as kind of a shield to not have any kind of accountability for what's going on. So this is the kind of thing.
When you say are you referring to Justin as using that shield?
Well, I'm saying
that, so I don't know. I can't speak on the opinions of
okay,
others.
as far as who they are, I guess there's a crew of insiders of people that feel that they own the Green Party. Basically, they're using party resources to promote their outside organizations and events. While we're losing ballot access, while we're losing members, while we're having half-ass production. We should be creating our own content, not just sharing outside content that just qualifies and legitimizes their organization. So this is kind of how they've done it.
Can you give an example of this?
The eco-socialism event. So when they had that climate strike march thing back in September, it was planned. It was this big thing. Well, a group from 3 different states, actually 4 if you include Anita Rios from the Ohio Greens, went and promoted this event, right? For Greens, by Greens, an eco-socialism socialist conference. And I guess the Green Party adopted this phrase recently, but in Anita Rios's interview as for Greens, as a co-chair, national co-chair, and state co-chair of Ohio, she said when she was asked if all the presidential candidates were going to be there, she said, "Well, I have to be really clear. This is not a sanctioned event, and we're just having the conversation." But that was towards the end of the interview. So basically, they a bunch of them have promoted this, and then the day that it came, they shared the content that was actually being viewed from a different page, basically Jill Stein's page. So David Cobb and Michael O'Neill have been running the Green Way Forward, but that's not an actual content that was sanctioned by the party. But what they've been doing is they've been using the party's platform to promote these things, rather than getting something for the party to grow the party's social media presence, to put out content.
Because if David Cobb or somebody else preferred one candidate over another, then their media would reflect that. Is that what you're trying to say?
So the whole point is that Michael O'Neill is actually our media guy, communications director, and he was also paid by the Hawkins campaign. So he got paid, the last time he got paid was in August, and then he became the communications director in September, and then of course, again, that content was shared. So you have three national co-chairs. You have all these people, 2 candidates. Dario even went. You have all these people, and the other candidates that wanted to go were prevented from going. They actually said that was one of the reasons why it was unofficial.
So that was the reason they were claiming it was unofficial, because they were actively preventing candidates from being at a public event?
because it's about the branding, right? So they want to control the narrative. So when they have their guy inside the party, they control the narrative. It's just like the media in the establishment. In order to get what comes with being the nominee, get what comes with having your group, your crew in charge of the national, is I mean, that's the whole point. That's where the little faction thing comes in, because we're a federation, so all these states join on to GPUS, but GPUS is the face of the party. That's why they're like, run green, run green, run green until you run for president. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you need to look like this, talk like this.
To cycle certain people through.
But the whole thing is to throttle. They want to throttle people. I mean, they're not really trying to push the boundaries. They're trying to ride the coattails off, like Bernie Sanders, that whole thing. That this is how they planned it.
Well, so let me push back a bit, because
please.
I feel like with Jill Stein personally, because I was a surrogate for her, she was like, I mean, she's beyond, in my opinion, like Howie and some of the other people put forward, as far as not only being radical, not only being involved, because she ran for president, 2 times, I think? Two times, and she's run for other office, and I think she's even held office once in Massachusetts. And she's kind of been radical. So it seems like it's more than just, it seems to be more than just looking a certain way or talking a certain way or acting a certain way that's being looked for. It looks like there is just special interest. I don't know if it's an ideology thing or something like that, but it seems like certain people know that with other actors that happen to be running for president, or that happen to have power within the Green Party, if they ally themselves with them, then they will get the personal benefits that come with that. It doesn't seem like it's a overall party ideology issue as much as it is individuals have a specific agenda and they just happen to have control of the party, because that is a problem. But I feel like it's kind of a conflation to say, okay, the party at large is acting like this, when it's only several individuals with power. Go ahead.
No. Yeah. Well, that's the whole point. It's not the party. It's not the values. It's not that the party's bad. It's just that the hustle of politics is when you have control of the, where the money runs through, how you qualify, then that's where that's the whole struggle. So it's not to say, again, it's not about the party itself, because the party's, the values are there. It's just, again, the leadership. So what happened was Andrea, which is Hawkins' campaign manager, she basically destroyed Colorado. 49 people voted in their primary out of 10,000 Greens registered. Some people have already filed some stuff, because I guess even somebody checked the voting thing before it was over. Like, just there's some weird things going on. So Chris Blankenhorn, right? So he's part of the Illinois Green Party, which was part of the chapter that put on this eco-socialism event with Rich Whitney. So he said in one of his openings for Howie Hawkins that a group of us got together and we made a plan for 2020. We didn't have a candidate, but we had a plan. So as you can see, and how things have transpired, you see that there's this network of people that have been using their party's resources, using their position in order to have an unfair advantage towards Howie Hawkins. And again, it's all about creating a narrative, and I mean, it's politics, but we're supposed to be what's different when it comes to politics. So you could see, good.
So I want to try to stay in the same topic but switch gears a bit.
Gotcha.
So on Twitter, you actually went at another one of your opponents, Dario Hunter, saying that he didn't speak up about the corruption happening within the Green Party. Now, I do have to say, if I'm being objective, he was on my show and he spoke up a lot about the corruption, and he also even spoke up for you. I'm curious as to why you said that.
Did he say my name, or did he? No,
he
just
said
Chad.
He said in my very first Zoom. Was it my second Zoom interview with him? He said your name, and he listed off a few other candidates as well, about how y'all were being kept off certain lists.
That was here in April, right? It was April. So this has been going on.
Yeah, I think it was beginning of April. Yeah.
So this has been going on since October. Remember the whole thing about trying to take candidates off the list? That they tried to take people off the gp.org in October.
Well, no, but he was also speaking about you all not being allowed to speak at certain events and things like that. So this was even before people were being removed from the list.
My point is that this is the first time he was asked that by you. So this whole time, while the candidates were sending emails, having these long conversations with these state parties, dealing with the PCSC, in chats with Ohio, trying to Sednam, David, and Dennis all gave up their time in order to allow Susan and I to speak, because they weren't going to let us speak on the debate stage. Okay. This was at the end of February. So the point is that during that time, Sednam called out. She said, this is what happened, and basically called out Dario and Howie. And Howie said, I'm going to leave it up to the state to make the decision. I don't want to say anything. And Dario passed. The point is that
Dario passed what?
Didn't say anything. When he was directly called out in this debate about the exclusion of candidates, about not even being able to be there and speak, to be kept off the ballot. I even got some writing.
Hold on, because you just jumped real quick. So we're talking. Was the response referring to keeping you off the debate stage or keeping you off the ballot? Those are two different things.
Well, I mean,
unless the question on the debate stage was about both the debate stage and the ballot, because if that's the question.
Well, the whole thing has to do with what's been going on this whole primary process and how they've been using these criteria in order to manipulate the narrative of the party. The PCSC is only supposed to be there is to provide resources. The official recognition is supposed to be for official resources from the party. They're not supposed to make any recommendations. There's no rule for them to say that. In fact, the rule states on there that they demand an open and fair debate. That is part of the actual.
They didn't give you a reason as to why they were keeping you off, basically. Other than you weren't successful enough at the time.
Well, because of the official recognition, one thing. Mm-hmm. And then the other people that were allowed to be on there was because they were on the California ballot. And the only reason why they were on the California ballot is because they went directly to the Secretary of State and got on the ballot. And I didn't do it because, I mean, part of this whole process
So my question would be, just playing devil's advocate, would it have been difficult for you to get on to the California ballot? Because I understand some stipulations to get onto a debate stage. Nothing like when we're talking about like having 50,000 donors, like I think that's absolutely ridiculous. But if you're saying if it's something as simple as we'll just go up to the Secretary of State, ask to be on the California ballot, and then you can be on this debate stage. I don't see why that would be difficult, because you have to get on the California ballot anyway to be viable at all in any party. So that's so I'm confused. Go ahead.
Well, I would have been able to get on the California ballot. The whole point is that I didn't expect to be kept off ballots because of this official recognition, because the official recognition is only for the extra resources.
Okay, so did the official recognition keep you off the ballot? Then I guess that's a better question.
I mean, for the most part, when California voted in order to who they were going to have on their ballot, was like at the end of October or something like that. So at that time, that's when everybody was dragging their feet, the PCSC, about getting the signatures out, about giving people, real information about how all these processes work in order to allow certain things to transpire. And that's one of the things that Ian was talking about. So one of the other thing was to raise the 5,000. You don't even have to register with the FEC until you raise 5,000. So the whole point. So
you had to raise 5,000 to do what?
To register
with stage.
No.
Because if you're talking about California, you're jumping topics on me.
I got you. I'm trying to go down to PCSD. The 5,000 is there's the official recognition requirements.
Okay, table that for a second. I'm still trying to get this debate stage thing down.
Oh, but that's what they're using basically to prevent candidates from being on.
So the ballot. So California. So the one requirement was the California thing. To the raising $5,000.
No. Sorry, I'm mixing it up. So in Ohio, we're talking about the specific Ohio debate and being on the ballot. They basically said that because
just the debate, not being on the ballot, just the debate.
I got you. Okay, same thing. Because of the California ballot, I wasn't on that, and because I'm not an official recognized candidate. Those two reasons. So the money.
So they said you had to have both. You had to be both.
One or the other.
Recognized.
One or the other.
Okay, so I guess that's why I'm curious about the California
Gotcha.
situation, because at a certain point, you as a presidential candidate kind of has to put yourself in the best situation where it's almost indisputable that you should be on that debate stage. So that's in a situation like that. I feel like I understand the official recognition situation. That's pretty messed up. And I don't really agree with the way they went about that, because they claim to be decentralized, but then they made a centralized decision. They're making centralized decisions. That I understand. But as far as making the debate stage so you can make your point, if it was something as simple as going up to the Secretary of State, may I ask why you didn't do that? If it was in February or March, I would be a little bit more understanding, because it was the coronavirus season. But in October, I feel like maybe you don't believe that you should be at least a little bit accountable for not getting your name on a ballot there, considering you needed that state to win anyway.
Okay. Well, first of all, California, you had, I think it was by the end of December, or there was something last year when that was decided or whatnot. Like you had a deadline to get on the ballot. The whole point is that I was trying to wait as long as I could to show what I could do without raising any money, and that was the whole point. If we want money out,
did you have? Okay, so I guess that's where I'm lost. So you needed money to get on the California ballot. Was that the issue?
No. It's because I didn't file with the FEC, because I was trying to make the point of I look at what you can do without even raising the money to even have to file with the FEC. So that was the whole point.
You should probably. I mean, you don't have to raise money to file with the FEC.
No, you don't. And that's what I went ahead and did, because I didn't realize that they were going to prevent people from being on ballots or to even speak at events or party functions, because that's when I planned on getting the signatures. But you can't even get signatures with a paper. People can't write their name. They have to go to this Google Doc that's controlled by the PCSE, which is the people that investigated themselves and found nothing wrong. Gotcha. It's like.
Dario and Ian Slackman mentioned that briefly too. So
right, but I understand. I understand that whole point of like, okay, well, do this paperwork for this, whatnot. But that still doesn't negate my value as a candidate and what I can bring to the table.
It doesn't. But right, I'm just at a certain point, like if you're running for president, I feel like there does have to be like a level of accountability where if it's something as simple as something in your control, like the official party recognition isn't necessarily in your control, and so I understand that. But that's on the other side of that fence. If the secretary, because like if you're FEC, you should file for FEC regardless, because you still have to account for your expenditures. So you might even have to raise a bunch of money. But if you spend any money and it's about your presidential campaign, you got to account for it anyway. So I feel like that's something you could have
either
raise
or spend $5,000. That's the whole thing with the FEC. So
so you do have to raise money to be part of FEC, is what you're saying.
But you don't even have to file with the FEC until you raise or spend $5,000.
No, so you don't have to file until you raise or spend $5,000.
Right.
But the likelihood, if you want to go deep into the primary, you're going to spend $5,000 at least. If you want to go deep into you don't have to if you're just trying to make a symbolic.
But look at where we're
representation. But
it's not just a symbolic. The whole point is to show what can be done through social media. Look at how
that's technically the definition of symbolic. I'm just saying. Right. I'm not trying to denigrate the point. But I'm just saying
it's not symbolic. Like literally reaching people. This is the way in order to work as a unit, because the idea is about the narrative. That's the thing that the establishment has, is they have the narrative, the state media. That's what creates the spectrum, whatever discussion of conversation. This is why it's so important to be able to show that we have the technology to communicate, to connect. We're just not using it properly in order to apply pressure just by calling people out on their behavior, because their narrative, because their reputation is so important to them, can topple things. Look at
I agree with that, but I'm just speaking just generally, or excuse me, specifically about, because I feel like I agree with that message. I think that social media can be used by populists and progressives to drive a message home, to hold people accountable. I 100% agree with that. But I feel like you would have put yourself in a better position to spread that message by being on the debate stage. And if it only required for you to register at the FEC or file with the FEC, and then of course register in California to be on the ballot, if it was something as simple as that, like that's like the least complicated thing you probably have to do for the entire election. To be honest with you. That's why I was kind of confused at. It's hard to consider a candidate, just so I'm speaking from an objective voter's perspective. It's hard to consider a candidate serious if it's only required for you to do these two things. And trust me, as a Tulsi Gabbard surrogate, I wish that would have been the only requirement.
So there's the point, is that on the official recognition, first of all, that is not supposed to prevent you from being on the debate stage. They've used that requirement, and it's not just the signatures, it's not just the registered FEC, it's not just raising the money, it's also not being a member of another party. And that's the whole thing with Howie Hawkins, is he's multiple and so that's what people raise as an issue. But they've used that official recognition that he shouldn't have got because he is a member as a way to keep people off the ballot. So it shows like Ian had 99 signatures, and you're seeing how it is a centralized group, because this PCSC are basically limiting or controlling what the party sees as a presidential candidate. So there's who's ever on there, which if you look at the list, even the other co-chair from Ohio was going around in December basically saying, I think people should drop out. A member of the PCSC, like publicly going around talking shit, going to my supporters just recently.
Technically, he's entitled to his opinion, but then I would have to ask, when he went back to his committee, did he try to engage in rules changes that would have caused people to drop out?
Well, but that's completely against the even purpose of the PCSC. That's the whole point, is they're not supposed to be using it as a gatekeeping mechanism. They're supposed to say, hey,
because I know you say his opinion was this, but did he somehow go back to the PCSC? And could you let people know what the PCSC is in case people don't know?
Sorry, the Presidential Campaign Support Committee.
There you go. And so did he go back to the PCSC and then say, well, because I want candidates to drop out, or not even saying that, just saying, hey, we should orchestrate rules or create rules that force candidates out, even if they're not ready to drop out?
It's about using your position. If you got a position of leadership, if you're a co-chair, if you're on the PCSC and you're making these narrative points, or trying to say how you feel, and shifting, influencing basically how people feel about candidates, that's nobody knows. And that's the whole thing, is what that is. This whole thing is a way to do a popularity contest. If people knew me, it wouldn't be no big deal. My whole point was to come in, show what I can do without raising any money, not even worry about that. And if get the signatures, whatever, you can get that any day. You can raise the money any day. Like they could say, FEC took me 20 minutes to do, but that wasn't the point. The other thing too had to do with strategy, because strategy is when you come in trying to identify the toxic behavior, you have to play dumb. You can't throw all your things out there at once. And that's one of the things I've done, is because people didn't take me seriously as far as what value I can bring, they showed their ass a lot more. And they were very open about some of the dirty things that they've done. And they didn't realize that some people were taking notes. Some people were cataloging everything and really mapping out how they've been using their positions to manipulate the process, as well as basically steal party resources. I mean, you got
so now that because you said some of the same things that Ian Slackman's pointed out, and you said some of the same things that Dart Hunter has also pointed out, and so I would be in agreement with you there. Now, as a presidential candidate, how would you like to see that change before we wrap it up?
Well, so the process, right? The power of the pulpit. The presidential election is the Super Bowl of elections, if you will. It's the one election that really gets people engaged into the process, because the whole country is basically focused on one. So it's important as the mascot of the Green Party. So this is very important to understand why they're trying to control the narrative, why people want the nomination, because a lot of money runs through it, and that sets the pace. So the idea is, if we want as a party to grow the party, the culture needs to be right before we can even do anything. We have to offer value to people's lives. So what we should have done as presidential candidates is work together for ballot access, one state at a time. And Sednam's talked about something similar, this basic idea, and work on it as a unit. Pull all our ideas together and allow people to be engaged, state by state, and bring value. Because what's the point of even being on a ballot if you don't have the people that are even engaged or interested in the party? And one of the other things, in order to do that, we have to actually promote the primary. We had an incredible opportunity to get people engaged into the party while while not having to make a decision because it's not the general election. By the time the general comes around, everybody's holding their breath. And so this is,
that's
you
true, because
see,
I'll be honest with you. A lot of people thought the Green Party was pretending as if Howie had already won, because a lot of people felt like that. I didn't even know Dario or you. I didn't know that Ian Slackman had run in the past before he had eventually dropped out, and so I feel like that's kind of unacceptable if you're a party of any kind and you're running a primary, because essentially that means no one is interested in what you have going on. It doesn't bode well for the general election.
Well, and the point to show is what we have been promoting is, nothing against Lisa Savage, but we have been promoting. Lisa Savage started her campaign as a Green, but then shifted it into an independent party in order to, lower the requirements. But the only campaign that we've even been sharing is basically an outside candidate now. And we're using party resources to promote. And again, this is all connected to all these people. Justin Beth, he paid her, he donated $2,400. David Schwab, he's on. Jill Stein for president raised $150,000 in 2019, even though she's not running. You can check out the FSC. David Schwab made $25,000. These people, it's this connected, organized people that they understand how to
manipulate the system to their advantage.
It's the game. So we just have to realize if we're not putting all our resources focusing together at one point, nothing's going to change. That's why being affiliated to other parties, you're splitting up the energy. If you were really bringing people together, bring it under the Green Party banner that's supposed to house everybody, not just, it's counterproductive, and that's why we never grow. We're splitting ourselves up.
So your whole idea is people seem to be more focused on the individuals of the Green Party, when instead the party should be focused on first, how do we make gains as a unit? Because it doesn't matter if one individual may be exceptional. If we don't get it together as a unit, then we're never going to be viable. Basically, that's what you're saying.
Right. So, for instance, you could imagine everybody sharing the same content, the same meme, the same picture at the same time as a unit, and to apply pressure, making something go viral. One thing can completely revolutionize the way both political parties are run, how they operate. You got kids.
Well, yeah, but if you're running for president, though, you don't want to be sharing your memes with other presidential candidates. I'm just saying, I wouldn't. Maybe I get now if the party behind these presidential candidates wants in the various states want to work together to push that type of content. I 100% agree with you.
Right.
But if I'm running for president, you don't get access to my content. I work with you so we can all have ballot access, because I'm a little bit different. I'm very competitive. Right. I want to beat your ass. If I'm running for anything, I don't want to just beat you by default. I want to murk you. So I get that, but I feel like when it comes to content production and media, that's kind of a separate topic for the Green Party itself and its apparatus to deal with, not necessarily the presidential candidates running within the party.
Well, I meant more as a nominee. Basically understand how social media works and work as a unit that way, because we have to educate people, because censorship, if we can get around censorship, we can break through the propaganda, we find out who's corrupt, and then that gives us a level playing field in order to have an honest discussion about stuff.
Gotcha.
Those three topics.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, Chad.
Thank you, man.
Real quick, I'm gonna read this super chat and you can tell everybody where to find you. Al Martins, because you've been fair to Tulsi and fair in general, despite you and Tulsi being too left wing for me domestically, I'm donating. I appreciate that, Al Martins. Good looking out. Chad, tell everybody where they can find you. ChadWilson.us or at ChadWilson2020. Awesome. Thank you very much. And for everybody else, thank you all for tuning in to this live stream interview on Mikasa Sukasa. And always remember, more than anything else, find your balance.